News into sports center. Shams Charania just here moments ago reporting that the Grizzlies are trading Ja Morant to the Blazers for Jeremy Grant and Chris Murray. Memphis had explored trading the two-time All-Star at the deadline. He's played in only 79 games in 3 seasons due to injuries and suspensions. A bit of a fall from Morant, who was once on an absolute trajectory of stardom. Will this change of scenery help Portland? Will it help them at the books? Before the trade, the Trailblazers were plus 9,000. They've moved now to 8,000 and Western Conference title to 4,000, respectively. Now, as we welcome in Ramona Shelburne, all things NBA with her. Ramona, big move from the Blazers just in the last hour. What do you make of this trade by Portland to bring in Morant?
So Portland is a team we're all trying to figure out, okay? They've got new ownership there. Tom Dundon, he just won a Stanley Cup, so he's obviously an accomplished owner. But so far, what we've seen is that he's into making big moves. He tried to get Anthony Davis at last year's deadline. He pursued Giannis Antetokounmpo at last year's deadline. And again, in this offseason, he landed a star here in Ja Morant, but it's a fallen star. And the question now is, how many guards do you need? Because you got Damian Lillard. Remember that great story from last summer, Matt? Damian Lillard's coming back. They got Drew Holiday. They got Scoot Henderson, former lottery pick. And Denny Avdija, who was an All-NBA player, he's kind of a point forward. So I don't quite know why they need all these guards here, and about to find out.
Yeah, stay there with me, because it would seem to me that if you're acquiring a lot of one position, that means you can afford to get rid of one at that position to maybe acquire another star. So connecting tea leaves here and dots, what does this trade mean potentially for the Jaylen Brown saga?
News from the NBA, where the Memphis Grizzlies have traded Ja Morant to the Portland Trailblazers for Jeremy Grant and Chris Murray. That is according to ESPN. So Ja splashed onto the NBA scene with the Grizzlies in the 2020 season, winning Rookie of the Year and later making 2 All-Star teams. His career stalled out due to a series of injuries and off-the-court controversies, including a 25-game suspension for conduct detrimental to the league in 2023. He joins a Portland roster that already has point guard Scoot Henderson and Damian Lillard on that roster. And again, you're getting a look at those reported trade details. The Trailblazers getting Ja Morant in this trade with the Grizzlies. Let's welcome in our NBA analyst Sam Quinn here to break down this big news. The Grizzlies, finally, we've been talking about this for such a long time. Is the Ja Morant era with Memphis going to be done? He has moved on, now a member of the Trailblazers. And Sam, you were saying not what you expected. You thought Portland maybe like a bottom 10 team to make this move. Why is it so shocking to you, and why is it hard to wrap your head around this trade?
Well, first things first, the Blazers already have several point guards, right? Damian Lillard expected to come back from his torn Achilles next season. They drafted Scoot Henderson, number 3 overall. I thought he showed a lot of promise in his late season return last season. Denny Avdija just made an all-star team effectively playing point guard. When Portland's guards were hurt for most of the year, he was the primary ball handler. There are a lot of guards on the team. We haven't even covered Drew Holiday yet. I'm not sure what they envision as the fit here. Is there a follow-up trade coming? I am very confused at this. Now, they didn't give up much, and I think the logic here essentially is that they are taking a buy low opportunity on somebody with all-NBA talent. Ja Morant obviously was a superstar at his peak, has not played at that level consistently for several years. There were some promising signs towards the end of his Memphis tenure, a couple of very, very nice games before his season ended. But on paper, I am really confused about what sort of basketball team they're actually trying to put out on the court. Ja Morant is a complete non-shooter from deep. The Blazers were one of the worst three-point shooting teams in the NBA last season. Ja Morant doesn't really play defense. That's kind of the culture they're trying to build in Portland. Obviously, last season the defense took a step back, but the year before, they were incredible defense after the trade deadline. I am very confused. I think this is just a talent play more than anything. Maybe there's some follow-up move that we're not seeing yet, but on paper, this is a very confusing trade.
So I know obviously you broke it down. There's a lot of guards that are on that team there. Scoot Henderson, talking about Dame. Do you think that Ja is going to have to fit with Dame or Scoot Henderson, or do you ultimately think there are going to be more moves that are coming and they're just kind of accumulating some assets here?
Yeah, I have to imagine there's some sort of follow-up trade coming. Now, Portland has been heavily linked to Jaylen Brown from Boston. Now, maybe Drew Holiday would be the matching salary in that sort of deal. We assumed that Jeremy Grant would be. Jeremy Grant obviously is now headed to the Memphis Grizzlies. But even still, Damian Lillard has a no-trade clause. You're not going to trade him. Maybe Scoot Henderson is going out in another trade. He is eligible for a rookie extension this offseason. He's a very tricky extension candidate, having missed most of last season due to injury, and Portland obviously already having all of those guards. Something to keep in the back of your mind, Deni Avdija, they're going to want to renegotiate and extend him next offseason. They're going to need cap space to do that. Maybe they're afraid that a Scoot Henderson extension would cut into the money that they would use to do that. We're going to have to see what the bigger picture here is, but there are so many guards, so many ball handlers on this team. I'm a little confused as to how this makes sense. There's probably a piece of the puzzle that hasn't made itself clear yet.
And Sam, you referenced it. Portland obviously rumored to be in the running for Jaylen Brown. So in your mind, does this make it more likely or less likely that that could ultimately come to fruition when you're thinking of, hey, if there is potentially another move that's coming or they're getting assets to do something else, where does that land in your mind as it pertains to Jaylen Brown?
Maybe slightly less likely, not overwhelmingly less likely. They, again, still do have that big Drew Holiday cap number to send out in the Jaylen Brown trade if they do need money for that. I assume Jeremy Grant was the likeliest big contract to go to Boston. Maybe the Celtics didn't want Jeremy Grant, and I wouldn't blame them for that because Jeremy Grant is no longer the player that he was in his peak. His shooting did bounce back last season, but he's never really been a great defender. He's declined on that front. Not much of a rebounder for his position. He's kind of just a scorer at this stage of his career. Drew Holiday, obviously a lot more balanced as a player. Boston had him when they won the championship in 2024. So maybe that's it. It is one less contract to work with, but I don't think that would be an impediment if Portland is motivated enough. I do look at this now, and the more I think about it, the more I feel like Portland just looked at Ja Morant as a former star talent and said, it is very hard to get that caliber of player to come to Portland. If we can get that guy basically for free with no draft capital attached, why not take the swing, see how it goes? Worst case, in a year, he's an expiring contract. We can use that money some other way.
So the value that they did get for, like it's a 25-year-old, and you mentioned it, like former star and big name in the NBA. Do you think the upside for Ja is still elite and still, worth expecting? Or do you think maybe the window for Ja Morant, when you factor in injuries and the off-the-court issues, is really limiting him to what he can be down the road?
The way I've been describing Ja Morant is that I think there's maybe a 10 to 20% chance that he can still be a superstar. The thing that made him a superstar more than anything was his ability to get to the basket. He was so dangerous, driving downhill, so hard to stop. Those numbers have been trickling down for several years. They did start to tick back up towards the end of last season, his last 10 games or so, but he has not generally been the same level of rim finisher since the injury started to pile up that he was early in his career. If he can get back to being that level of scorer at the basket, maybe there is still a star in there somewhere. But if he can't, the problem with Ja Morant is that he basically has no